Live from a NASCAR bunker in Kyle's parents' basement, it's Turn the Radio Off with Mike Parsons and Kyle Bauer.
Fan at Facebook.com/TTRO Show. Follow along on Twitter.com/TTRO Show. Or just listen right now. It's Turn the Radio Off.
Well, our fair state of Michigan has been front page news for a while for the wrong reasons, which I guess you never are front page news for the right reasons. I mean,
very rarely.
You're never going to turn on CNN and see Anderson Cooper saying, top story tonight, everything's great in Michigan.
Well, Thrillist will say that.
Yeah, right.
If Thrillist was running the news.
You won't believe what's happening in Michigan.
Yeah.
Lester Holt's not coming on with that headline as much as I love me some Lester Holt. Of course, what's been dominating the headlines in our show for the past couple months has been that Flint water crisis. But Saturday night, I have to say, Kyle, this Uber shooting spree is probably, obviously it's tragic, it's horrendous, but it's probably one of the most bizarre. Does this qualify as a mass shooting? I would say qualify,
for sure,
because it was 6 dead, 2 injured as we tape this. This is probably one of the most bizarre mass shootings that has ever happened.
Yeah, and one thing I've noticed, and I mean, I don't know, I was out of town and very inebriated throughout the weekend, so I can't really get a gauge on what the national response was to it, but I did seem to get the same outrage from previous shootings. And I keep wondering when we're going to hit that tipping point of apathy. Kind of like how we've gotten war fatigue.
Yeah.
If we're just going to get mass shooting fatigue. Because there was always a theory that when nothing changed after Sandy Hook, when 20 elementary school-age children were gunned down in their classroom, if that couldn't change anything, nothing will. And then we had, follow-up a few years of outrage, and it seems like I think maybe the San Bernardino shooting, which kind of crossed everyone's wires because not only was it a domestic mass shooting, but it was a ISIS attack.
Right.
I think kind of frayed everyone's wires, and now everyone is just so worn out, plus the election cycle, that it seems to not garner much of a response, which is a shame because anytime something like this happens, I think it merits the same amount of weight, and right. I just don't feel like that's been the case in this instance.
Well, and it's hard to gauge the national reaction because it happened in our state. For those that don't know, or for those that are kind of iffy on the facts, Saturday night, and I make it a point to not remember these shooters' names because, at first it was me making a point, but sadly there's just so many I can't remember them all. But a man in Kalamazoo, an Uber driver, he, for some reason or another, he pulled up to an apartment complex, randomly shot a woman in the parking lot, drove people around in his Uber collecting fares for a couple of hours. Then he decided to swing by a car dealership, randomly shoot a man and his son looking at a car before heading to a Cracker Barrel, randomly shooting a couple people in a van, and then drove around for a couple more hours before being arrested without incident in a bar parking lot. And I think, obviously, the weird part about this is the guy shot a couple people, went about his business for a couple hours, shot a couple more people a couple hours later, drove around for another couple hours before being arrested. And I think what people are having a lot of trouble wrapping their heads around is, number one, his motive, because we don't know yet. And number two, how did he pick who he was shooting? It's not like he was just walking around town shooting around. He picked and chose, and he had people in very close quarters with him that he chose not to shoot. It's just that, like I said, very, very bizarre circumstances.
It does seem like it was at random, and who knows, it might have been. He may ultimately just say it was at random. There may not have been a motive other than he just wanted to shoot people. He wanted to, hell, I don't know.
Right. Well,
I don't want to use the old headlines excuse. Maybe he was just sick, felt the world needed a cleansing, and decided to randomly take some people.
Well, and obviously when something like this happens, people look for a motive, right? You have to. But I think a lot of times where we get lost is, as sane people, we try to rationalize what an insane person does, and you just can't. Sometimes, now obviously there has to be an investigation, but sometimes you just have to say, the guy's crazy. His head's not right. His wires aren't set up like the rest of us, and
he shouldn't have had access probably to a gun.
Right.
And again, I mean, I'm not going to use this to stump too hard because I think that's another thing we're all a little wary of. I don't know. Maybe give it 3 or 4 more mass shootings, and we'll kick that argument back up.
Well, see, it's odd too, Kyle, because a lot of times when this happens, you say, oh, well, right after shooting, it's not the time to have the conversation.
It is the time to have the conversation. When are you going to have the conversation otherwise?
Right. You think to yourself, okay, give it a couple weeks. Well, within a couple weeks, there's already been another mass shooting or two.
I suppose this is some sort of a count of record, but if I were to ever be killed in a mass shooting, I would want it politicized.
Right.
Because I wouldn't want it to happen anymore.
Well, and Kyle, I think you're right. And I think whenever something like this happens, people say, "Oh, it's about guns getting in the hands of the wrong people."
Yeah, make me a martyr. Conservatives love martyrdom. So let's flip the script on that.
And then you get another group of people who says, "No, it's not about guns. It's about mental health." When the reality is, it's
about
both.
Both. Yeah.
It's both. Okay, and to discount one to make a point for the other is wrong.
Yeah, it's like in from my perspective towards the left on this, it's like watching a Bernie Sanders supporter and a Hillary Clinton supporter argue and then end up getting in a cage match to the death with each other when really they're on the same side about 90% of the issues.
Right, because both people say, hey, these mass shootings are terrible, right? Conservatives, liberals, and then where they start to veer off is how to solve this problem or minimize the risk of it happening again.
But the thing I never understood though is just completely denying that mental health, like they can't coexist.
Right.
That we just can't attack it from the angle that we have a mental health crisis and a gun crisis in this country, and they keep intersecting on the Venn diagram and killing a whole lot of people. Instead, you got a bunch of liberals yelling at each other,
right.
Well, when you try to make it a mental health issue, you're trying to take away from the gun issue,
right.
And that's the whole point, is that we got to take guns away.
Right. Think about this now, okay? Think about this. You're not in front of a Blaze.com article, the comments section.
No, a lot of times it's a lot of anti-gun folks arguing with each other about what angle to take.
Well, look, I mean, just as you're listening to this, you're probably listening to it alone because your friends don't want to hear us and they left a long time ago. But just think about it, okay? Mental health issue, gun issue. Two of them put together, it leads us to where we are right now. And you got your conservatives saying, well, if there was someone with if there was a good law-abiding citizen with a gun, they could have stopped it. That's correct. But you also get your liberal friends who say, oh, well, if you should have known that this guy had mental health issues and made it impossible for him to get a gun. That's true also. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? But this person who has half the truth here and this person who has half the truth here, if they combine that truth, they could start working towards a solution. But they tell this guy he's 100% wrong. He tells this guy it's 100% wrong. And we seem to have the same debate over and over, and nothing ever goes anywhere.
And that's not even taking into account the real foe that you have to fight in this is the gun lobby who will do anything to disrupt any kind of civil discourse on this issue because they don't want to see any politicians veer away from all that money, all those checks that they've been getting, and decide to come up with stricter gun legislation. Instead, Michigan has actually just opened up a series of laws making it easier to get guns, where you don't have to get mental health checks. I mean, seriously, they just passed legislation on that.
Right.
In the midst of all this Flint water stuff, they're putting bans on background checks for mental health for gun owners.
Well, and a lot of people will say, well, this guy showed no signs of mental health. He had no history of mental health. And you know what, Kyle? Maybe every now and then somebody will slip through the cracks. But just because one person slips through the cracks doesn't mean that having a conversation and maybe changing some guidelines won't prevent further tragedies. And I say it all the time. I say it all the time. Yes, I agree. If there was a law-abiding CPL gun owner around, they could have stopped him.
Maybe.
But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have a conversation about the criteria for owning a gun. Just because I think that someone who's an exemplary example of integrity and lawfulness, just because I think that person could have stopped this, doesn't mean that I don't think that maybe we should re-examine who's allowed to have a gun and who's not.
Yeah, and assault and automatic weapons are something that personally I'm against.
Right.
And I'll reiterate it because I feel like anytime I bring up gun control, I have to qualify it with I'm fine with people owning a gun, owning a handgun for protection in the home. I'm fine with that. Or even if you want to carry a handgun for a CPL because you think your death wish, that's fine too. All right, but the point remains: people they got to have better. They got to have mental health screening. They got to be able to pass a background check. They got to be able to face, like me. Whenever I cross the border, I'm constantly having a background check run on me. My file and my record and all that is constantly being updated. And if there's any sort of red flags or any sort of issues, they can turn me right around and send me back. Or they can detain me. Why can't it be the same way when somebody purchases a gun?
And I feel like maybe I may need to clarify because I made a point a while ago, and you gave me a puzzled look like maybe I didn't explain it correctly when I said that, this guy in Kalamazoo, he would have passed all the background checks. So a lot of people say, oh, well, it wouldn't have done anything. Well, it wouldn't have done anything in this instance.
But in other instances, it would have for sure.
Right,
yes.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. We don't know because, we don't have mandatory background checks on these people. We don't have mandatory mental health screenings. And if you love owning your gun so fucking much, well, then just deal with it. Deal with the screenings. Deal with the background checks.
Right, because if you are qualified to have that gun, you will be allowed to keep it.
Exactly. And that's the thing. There are people who argue, well, even I'm trying to buy a gun the legal way. Why am I getting punished? The point is somebody has to get their guns legally.
Right.
There's enough illegal guns on the street.
Right. You're not being punished. It's just making sure
you're making things righteous. You're adding to a solution.
It's validating that you indeed are qualified to own one.
Exactly. And then you can worry about, once you get your gun, then you can worry about all the folks who have guns illegally or the government or whatever the hell your issue is.
The other aspect of this is Uber's worst nightmare coming true. This is all the doomsday scenarios, all the what-ifs when Uber became a thing happening.
And if all those rapes and assaults weren't bad enough before.
I did not know that was a problem. I knew that was a possibility.
It wasn't a problem in the United States. There was a big problem with it, especially in India. They seem to have an issue over there in general. But no, this has happened a couple times before. The instances, though, have been rare, and it's almost been as equal as the drivers getting attacked as the drivers attacking people. I mean, overall, you're still dealing with kind of a
crapshoot because what are we told our whole life, Kyle? Don't get into cars with strangers.
That's what you're doing.
Well, now there's an app that calls a stranger to you. And for the most part, it's been safe. Kyle, the one time I ever used an Uber was with you. I thought it was great.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I'm one of those people who, when I see something happen, I say, that's an isolated incident that's never going to happen to me. And to be honest, it didn't really happen to the passengers, but there was a murderous psychopath
who could have easily turned the gun on them at some point.
You, as an Uber rider,
frequent? Yes.
Is this going to change your behavior?
No, because I do feel like this truly was an isolated incident. But I've had issues in the past. I mean, I had a dude pick me up before. He had his pants undone, and he was driving about 95 miles an hour.
Jesus.
And he did not seem like he was mentally stable. And I sent an email about him to the company, and they responded promptly. They didn't charge me for the ride, and they said that they were going to address the situation. How exactly, I didn't know, but, like, geez, if I were a girl and my Uber driver picks me up and he has his pants undone?
Bye.
Oh, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I mean, so...
that's why I always like to buy mace for the ladies in my life.
that's not a bad strategy. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. Where it's not a bad strategy to do that. But so I've had that incident. I've had a couple times where they took the long way home, and I could tell,
to jack up the rate.
Yeah, but cab drivers were synonymous for doing that, and that was one of the reasons why I turned away from using cabs, even though cab drivers are unionized and are paid a living wage. But with all that said, I'll use Uber again. I will. They see this as an isolated incident. Of course, is it something that could happen? Yeah. Is there a lot more of a chance of it happening in an Uber, which is barely regulated, than a cab? Well, certainly, but I would still use Uber.
All right, let's take a quick break because there's still a lot of stuff I want to hit on. It's I almost said the weigh-in. It's Turn the Radio Off on the Internet.
Less rock, more talk. Turn the radio off.
Become a fan at peoplehatemypodcast.com.
So, let me repeat your order here. That'll be 1 double cheeseburger, ching. Large fries and a large soda, ching. 2 kids meals and 2 medium sodas, ching. 1 chicken sandwich, large fries, and a vanilla milkshake. Bada bing. That'll be $62.75. We're a little shy.
Remember when you could feed your whole family fast food for less than $10? Well, at Rally's, you still can. Rally's has it right.
Did you know kids who drink before age 15 are 5 times more likely to have alcohol problems when they're adults? Alcohol affects their judgment and their future. So start talking to your kids about underage drinking while they still listen. Start talking before they start drinking. For more information on teens and alcohol and learn what you can do, visit the web at stopalcoholabuse.gov. That's stopalcoholabuse.gov. This message has been brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Ad Council, and Detroit Sports Nation.
Switch off the radio. Turn off the radio. Shut down your radio system.
We'll do it live!
What?
I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Turn the radio off. There you go. I'm drunk.
Little throwback Detroit Sports Nation shout out. Shout out to our current affiliates, Cave Radio and Pendulum Podcasts. Cave Radio Broadcasting, PendulumPodcast.com. And Kyle, I never thought I would be saying this, but I am Team Taylor right now all the way. I'm Team Kesha all the way. What a mess that is, huh?
Yeah, well, I was just going to jump in. Taylor Swift has swung from being the great white hope of people who hate Kanye West, not because he's a successful black man, not at all.
More on that later, by the way.
Yes, she's gone from being the great white hope in the anti-Kanye movement. Anti-Kanye. I'm having trouble talking this segment.
I know what you mean.
I'm going to start over. Hold on. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, welcome back here to Turn the Radio Off here on Pendulum Podcast and Cave Radio. I'm Kyle Bauer.
Yes.
With me is Mike Parsons.
Yes, we know this already.
And we're about to talk about Kanye West and Taylor Swift. But first, let's talk about this Kesha situation where Taylor Swift has gotten involved by donating money to Kesha's defense fund because she's stuck in a very awful situation with her record producer, Dr. Luke.
Yeah, Kesha has gotten mixed up with this scumbag, Dr. Luke. I guess he's a big wig over at Sony. She made allegations that he emotionally abuses her, sexually abuses her, keeps her doped up on drugs. And she finally said, enough's enough. I'm taking this guy's ass to court so that I can break contract with him, and he's no longer in charge of my career. And Sony said, if you do that, you can't make any new music. And if you do, we're not going to push it. So she said, all right, I'll see your ass in court. Well, surprise, surprise, the court sided with Sony. And just imagine this. You have somebody who's just been tormenting you for years and years, and the law is saying that either you work with them or destroy the career that you've been working so hard to build. And that's what the court did.
And I find all of this so interesting, going back from my personal perception of Kesha, because you remember back in the day, as you were playing some old PSAs on that break, coincidentally, back in the day, I was in a place where I did not like Kesha. I said a lot of mean things about her, and it was obviously at another immature time in my life, but there was something about her persona that you're talking about her being doped up. It always seemed like she was doped up. I remember she had a rehab stint a couple years ago, and also when she was making her music, when she was popular, wake up in the morning, brush my teeth with a bottle of Jack.
Right. It was all about sex and drugs. And I actually saw, I wish
she was portraying this
slutty party girl.
Yes, and where she the type of girl that some unsavory college bros would maybe seek out,
right?
Because they feel they could take advantage of her in the same way this Dr. Luke fella was taking advantage of her.
It's funny because
it's like he was living out his fantasy and he was putting it on record.
Well, somebody tweeted out that the Kesha party girl drug doer, I guess, drug addict persona,
drugged up,
was cultivated by Dr. Luke, so when she spoke out against him, nobody would believe it.
That's awful. And that, by the way, if there's any girl out there who does enjoy to party, does enjoy to drink, maybe even has a drug problem, which has impaired her judgment, that doesn't mean that she should be sexually assaulted or molested or harassed or coerced or blackmailed.
Right. Well, and I think what we're seeing...
But a lot of people view it that way.
Right, exactly. Right. Because she has sex, you have free reign. Like, I remember I was arguing with somebody, because I guess Iggy Azalea was complaining that, like, people were actually putting their finger, where they shouldn't be.
Oh, my God.
They're like, well, she sings songs about sex. That doesn't mean you can just do whatever you want to her.
Personally, or like when she was in the crowd, or
when she was at a concert, at concerts,
people would try to get their hand up there, eh?
I guess
that's
so.
Awful.
That is awful.
You should be immediately kicked out for that. Yeah.
Right. Oh, absolutely. At the very least.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like the artistic community is railing around her. The guy from Fun who's in Bleachers, Jack Antonoff, I think his name. He has a side project, Bleachers. He's dating Lena Dunham.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, he's offered to...
He wears the tiny shirts.
Right. Well, I think they all do. But he has offered to make music with her and leak it out if she can't get out of her deal with Sony. Taylor Swift has donated $250,000 to her legal fund and whatever else. And, a lot of times Taylor Swift gets on my nerves, but I think that she's a strong woman in the music industry.
She is.
And I think that if there's somebody who could go up against a Sony in the name of another artist or whatever to have in your corner in a fight like this, I think Taylor Swift might actually have the clout to actually do something about this.
She had that spat with Apple Music, too.
Yeah,
where
and Spotify.
And she ended up coming up roses on that one. But Mike, this also made me think of someone else. And every story is different. Nothing is implied. But Lana Del Rey was another one who I thought of who has this cultivated personality, who has this persona of, kind of this coked out lounge singer from 1970.
Right. I see her as a depressed, bored, rich girl.
Either or.
Yeah.
She kind of wavers back and forth. And she even said, I think like 3 or 4 years ago, came out publicly and said, I'm disappointed that I'm not more successful considering how many record executives I've slept with.
Wow.
Now, I put that up against what happened to Lady Gaga. Something similar happened to Lady Gaga with Kesha, where she had a record producer early in her career rape her and coerce her and blackmail her for her record deal and for studio time to get her music out. And I think of just how infuriating and irresponsible Lana Del Rey makes me when she comes out with a statement like that, because they're all on the inside. They probably know this awful stuff goes on. It's just a matter of when they get the opportunity or the courage to speak out about it. And I think she's known. And I'm just saying, I don't know for sure. I'm just saying at the time that was an irresponsible statement to make, because stuff like this goes on without consent. And she has the autonomy to do what she wants, I know. But still, it doesn't. It creates this culture where women have to be submissive, where women can't take control of their own record deals or their own creative decisions, and it doesn't give an excuse for the bad climate, but it also doesn't help the bad climate.
Well, it makes these record producers seem predatory, right? It makes them seem like drug dealers saying, "Hey, first hit's free. You like this? You like fame? You like success? Okay, well now I've got you locked in this contract. If you want to keep this up, then you're pretty much my object."
Exactly, and that's why I thought, and it was like she was endorsing that.
Yeah.
She wasn't saying we need to stop this, I'm embarrassed about this, or I'm speaking out about this. They should be embarrassed about this, I should say. Instead she was saying, oh, well, didn't get me as much success as I thought, but I'm still open for business.
Right.
I'm just saying, you put it up against what's happened to Kesha, what happened to Lady Gaga. It's unfortunate, but that's not to take away who the real slime balls are in this, and that's certainly Dr. Luke.
Yep.
And anyone else who has perpetrated this, which I'm sure there's been quite a few.
And now I guess Demi Lovato is weighing in on this. She tweeted in response to the news that Taylor Swift donated $250,000 to Kesha, "Take something to Capitol Hill or actually speak out about something, and then I'll be impressed." Well,
okay, we don't need any of that.
Well, here's the thing, Demi. All right, newsflash, because nobody's more inspired by Demi Lovato than Demi Lovato. But, call me crazy, Demi Lovato. I don't think Taylor Swift did this to impress you.
No.
Like I said, Taylor Swift is a titan in the music industry. And, I was shading her at the Grammys because, I find her disingenuous at times. But I think this is her taking a stand for women who get taken advantage of in the music industry. And like I said at the beginning of the segment, if there's one person who can do something about this, it probably is Taylor Swift. So in this instance, like I said, I'm Team Taylor. Demi Lovato, grow up.
Demi Lovato, I think at this point right now needs to. I mean, she can do whatever the hell she wants. She went on a rant on Twitter the other day that seemed like she was calling for action in wake of the Kesha issue and calling for solidarity, and then she goes ahead and makes a comment that kind of walks back the idea of solidarity with other female artists out there. I mean, that's disappointing, and maybe I don't know what action. I mean, if you keep appealing this, is that what she means? Like appealing it to the Supreme Court? Is that what she's talking about?
I guess so. Maybe drafting a bill, which would be good, but at least in the meantime, maybe $250,000 will give Kesha enough legal firepower to fight this and maybe break that contract and take control of her career.
Yeah, and again, I just think back to her her persona that she had and how much I detested it. And it makes me really sad thinking back all the things I said about her then.
Well, maybe
as an artist.
Maybe you sensed that something was wrong, but you didn't.
Well, I didn't think she was a positive role model for anyone. Not that any musician has to be, but I'm just saying.
Which she wasn't, but...
Yeah, I didn't think she was good for anything. I thought she was regressive. And... that was my problem with her then, but I was looking at her. I wasn't looking at her producers.
Right.
I wasn't looking at this Dr. Luke guy. Didn't even know who he was.
Well, when you see a product, and that's what these pop stars are, they're a product. You see the product, and you don't see, everything that goes behind that product.
And that was the mistake, that I put a lot on her, and I didn't think about who could really be behind her or what could be at stake. And it's just an awful story, and I hope that eventually she's out of this contract. Another thing of note that I thought was a really powerful gesture, and hopefully it catches on. I doubt it will, though. Was a pop station in Toronto, which obviously it's Canada's #1 media market, is refusing to play any Sony music as a protest until Kesha's let out of her record deal.
Good.
And I would love to see other radio stations make a similar move, protest, but I doubt it, though. I really doubt it, especially because there's probably a bunch of executives who work in the radio industry that are probably siding with Sony. Or have probably done similar or just as detestable stuff. Remember, it's a culture that Kesha's fighting along with her record label.
Well, what you have to do is you don't have to convince the individual stations. You have to convince the conglomerates, right? Like if you got iHeart involved, that's half the radio stations. You got Cumulus involved in boycotting it. That's another third of the radio stations all over the place.
No offense to these certain conglomerates.
You don't have to be careful, Kyle. I know you are because I work for one of them. But go ahead, speak your mind.
I'm saying it's they're not, Mike. They're not gutsy enough.
I think
they're not
you're
going
right.
to take that risk. They're not going to lose those ratings. They're not going to lose that revenue. They're not going to be that controversial. And that's the problem. Like I said, she's fighting a culture that needs to change. And I'm glad to hear that Taylor Swift and Demi Lovato, even though she just threw some shade at Taylor Swift, still she was speaking out. I know Lady Gaga, again, who was a victim of something similar to this years ago, she's spoken out. I'm glad that we're seeing that, and it's a step in the right direction, but obviously there's a lot of work to do, and hopefully it ends well for Kesha.
Well, and you know what?
Right now it's got to be hell.
Like I said, I see a lot of the music community rallying around her, and if they can find a way to do that, and if you get powerhouses like Taylor Swift who can mobilize artists.
I think she can.
She shows up with her girl squad and stuff. I mean, she can mobilize artists. I think obviously Taylor Swift is someone you want to have as an ally and not an enemy.
She has a little Ed Sheeran in a box that she can take out, line them up like one of those music boxes.
And speaking of which, even though I think it was the Kardashians who ultimately led Kanye West to where he is now, him and Taylor had some back and forth, and it looks like Taylor is on the better side of that. And I got
she was going to be anyway.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, Kyle. Okay, Kanye West is getting a lot of flack right now, and I think this time a lot of it's justified. Right? He's been arrogant for years, and he's gone bankrupt. And on top of that, he didn't start a Kickstarter, but people are starting to Kickstarter for him. He's trying to hit up Mark Zuckerberg for money. And honestly, I see a guy on the verge of a mental breakdown. But like we've said, a lot of anti-Kanye sentiment, like a lot of things, are racially motivated. But he does, he
he's been an ass.
He does act like a jerk.
You can call it how it is, I think, in this case, where there's a lot of people, we're talking about personas right now.
Right.
There's a lot of people who are intimidated by his persona. They don't like that he's confident. They don't like that he's bold. They don't like that he's creative.
But he has been acting like an idiot lately.
But lately he has, and that's possibly because of the stress he's put himself under, maybe the stresses of his life in general.
And you know what? As much as I hate to jump on the bandwagon, I do think being involved with the Kardashians does wear you down. I think it does.
It probably does.
I'm not going to comment.
I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to comment on Bruce Jenner because I don't know what his journey was from male to female. But you look at Lamar Odom, which he had those demons before, but it didn't turn out too well for him. That guy who was married to Kim Kardashian for a minute, he's
Chris Humphries.
Chris Humphries.
He's still bouncing around the league. He was just traded.
Yeah, but I think that
he was married for 80 days or something like that.
It didn't help him.
Yeah,
and now and for the most part, Kyle, a lot of the anti-Kanye memes I think are funny. But there's one we've talked about on the show that I find absolutely 100% abhorrent. And I don't report things on Facebook because I've reported some terribly racist stuff
and never gets pulled.
So what I do, if I see something objectionable, I'm going to tell someone that it's horrendous. And it's this one that pops up from time to time. It's a shirtless Abe Lincoln putting Kanye West into a headlock saying, "I didn't free the slaves to hear about your bullshit." I find this so abhorrent. Like, number one, Kanye, because Kanye West is getting quote unquote uppity, freeing the slaves, what was a mistake?
Right, exactly.
I mean, what are you trying to say? And so someone on my friends list posted that. I said, this is horrendous. And she says, well, so is dipshit Kanye West. I said, this meme is horrendous on a bigger level than Kanye West is annoying. So, I go upon 10 minutes later, she screenshots what I said and tags me in it. And I'm like, what are you putting me on blast for? Because you posted a meme that I thought was racist and I criticized you for it? I'm fine with that. I said, you have the right to post whatever racist shit you want to, but you have a right. I have the right to tell you that it's awful. It's a two-way street. If you're I didn't tell you what to post and what not to post. I told you that what you posted was horseshit, and it's a two-way street. If you put that out in a public forum, then
it's subject to ridicule.
Unless you block me, go ahead and block me. I unfollowed you because obviously what you're posting has no merit, and you and I are not going to see eye to eye on this. So instead of me, every time you post something horrendous like that and taking time out of my day, I'm just going to unfollow you and not have it come across my feed to begin with. But I mean, and I don't think people mean it to be racist. They just mean it that they hate Kanye, but it's incredibly racist. Anytime you evoke slavery and you have Abe Lincoln putting a black man in a headlock saying that freeing the slaves was a mistake because this guy dares to be a little brash and annoying. Hello?
Right. And Mike, you're absolutely right about that. And I think
I was proud to be called out for it because I'm like, you know what? I know every guy on the Thirst Patrol who's coming to your defense is a jackass. And these are people I don't want to be associated with.
Yeah, now you know. And I'm sure they were on the Thirst Patrol.
Actually, it wasn't too bad. Not a whole lot of people. Like, some guy posted a meme about how I need to get the stick out of my ass. And I said, oh, that's a common defense for people who post horrendous shit.
Yeah, it is, because it's racist, and people don't like to be called out on the racism, or they don't like to have their eyes open to what they're saying is racist. I know a person, I won't name names, but I'll say 90% of the time he's a good guy.
Right, and the person who posted, I don't think she's racist, but I think the meme is disgusting and racist.
But every once in a while, he veers off and he says some shit that's racist. And I call him out on it. I usually make a Klan joke about it or something. And we laugh about it, and he's like, yeah, I know. It's almost like, And he's never done anything derogatory, said anything. So follow me here.
Okay.
He's never been outwardly. It's kind of like how your dad could be racist. Not saying your dad is racist,
right?
But,
like if they
or
met
your
a black,
uncle's racist. If they met a black person, they wouldn't
judge them, but
when they're not around, they'll make joke that you would hear in Kentucky in 1971.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
Got it.
Like, it's kind of like that. But he's not defensive. He's not like, what do you mean? I'm not racist. I'm just politically incorrect. No, he does. He's like, yeah, I know I was racist. Whatever. I almost prefer that to people like this who are too vapid to understand that what they're putting out there is dangerous or stupid.
And if
you know what I mean?
And if you think it's not true, why are you getting so mad about it?
Exactly. It's weird how I'd prefer someone who's upfront about it. As long as they don't act on it,
right?
I would prefer someone who's upfront about it.
I mean, we all have our preconceived notions of people based on how they look, right? But I mean, if you could call someone out and say, "Yeah, you know what, I need to work on that," that's self-improvement.
Yeah, exactly. But as far as self-improvement with Kanye, I don't know exactly what's going on with him. If some of this is a put-on for publicity, I mean, I definitely think he's narcissistic. But I also think he could be manic.
Yeah.
And I think that's a possibility. I don't really believe that he's in debt. I don't care whether he really is in debt. A lot of people have been celebrating that, which is another thing I find a little bit bizarre.
Right.
I don't know what he has done to you
personally
to make you so happy that he could be $53 million in debt. I don't really think he is. I don't think he's sincere when he's asking Mark Zuckerberg for money. I think that's more comedy or performance art or whatever to get people to listen to his album. But I do think there's a screw loose bouncing around up there, and if there is in fact one, I hope he gets help. I'm tired of everyone propping Taylor Swift up against him. I'm tired of everyone criticizing him and making thinly veiled racist remarks about him. He's a great artist, and if there is something wrong, I want to see him get some help. But until then, I'm entertained by all this, except when he said Bill Cosby was innocent. That was stupid.
Yeah,
that pissed me off.
Yeah, and like I said, it's okay to criticize him when he's acting like a dick, because let's be honest, he has been acting like a dick. Let's take a quick break, Kyle, because on the other side, there's still a lot of things that I want to touch on. It's Turn the Radio Off on the internet.
Turn the radio off with Mike Parsons.
No drug dealers living next to me. Pretty good deal.
Kyle Bauer.
Yeah.
People hate my podcast.com.
Mr. Bucket.
That's right. I'm Mr. Bucket. I'm Mr. Bucket. Toss your balls in my top. I'm Mr. Bucket. Out of my mouth I will pop. I'm Mr. Bucket. We're all gonna run. I'm Mr. Bucket.
The game's Mr. Bucket. The first to get their balls into Mr. Bucket wins, but look out, because the balls will pop out of his mouth.
I'm Mr. Bucket. The balls pop out of my mouth. I'm Mr. Bucket. A ball is what I'm about. I'm Mr. Bucket. We're all gonna run. I'm Mr. Bucket.
Mr. Bucket from Milton Bradley.
Turn the radio off. Tell your friends about us. Make them like us on Facebook.
I am not sure if we are broadcasting properly.
Turn the radio off. Online and worldwide. TTROshow.com.
All right, I just want to throw out a couple numbers here, and I don't want to discuss this at length, Kyle, because there's something that you said to me before the show I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on. But obviously, a couple weeks ago, Justice Antonin Scalia, Supreme Court Justice, passed away. There's been some conspiracy theories, but his family is saying, all right, cut it out with that. He was sick. We understand everyone's concern, and we appreciate it, but he had a very weak heart, and he died of cardiac arrest. Please stop with the conspiracy theories that Obama had him offed so that he can swing the bench 5 liberal to 4 conservatives. But the one piece of legitimate assery, which I don't know if that's a term, but the one argument out there that I find really, really, how do I say this? I find it weak. Are the Republicans trying to convince Congress, trying to convince the president, trying to convince the American people that, hey, you know what? I think it's best for the country if we wait till after the election to pick a brand new Supreme Court justice.
There's that flexible Constitution again.
And these numbers, I threw these out on Facebook the other day without comment. It is the late evening of February 22nd. The longest it ever took the Supreme Court to vote yay or nay on a candidate was 125 days. I did the math. I don't have the exact number in front of me. The average time it took for each of the sitting Supreme Court justices to be approved, 77 days. How much time does Obama have left in office? 332 days. So they're trying to say it's been 80 years since a president picked a new Supreme Court justice during an election year.
Even though Reagan did with Kennedy in 88.
So the historic precedent's on our side. No, it's not. The only thing you could maybe make an argument for is taking 100 days to deny a couple Supreme Court justices and then making it carry over to the next term. But I mean, you're not gonna tell the president to wait 332 days and let the next guy pick it. I mean, let's be real. I mean, look, it's politics, right? It's part of the game, and the Republicans are trying to hedge their bets.
And it's also a lot of confidence that Hillary won't be elected as the next president.
Right, that's a lot of confidence. And you know what? I mean, the way cycles seem to go, we've had 8 years with a Democratic president. It's a decent bet to think that the next president will be Republican. But how do you know that? You're right. How do you know that?
I would have said that like 6 months ago. Now I don't.
Right. So, but anyway, don't give me this historical precedence crap, okay? Just be honest and say, look, we're going to try to gridlock this thing for the next 332 days. Just say that, because that's what's going to happen if it turns out that the next president picks a Supreme Court justice. Are you only going to have 8 Supreme Court justices for almost a year?
And that's what kills me is, again, I hear about the Second Amendment, but this is a party that's actively talked about, that has gutted the Fourth Amendment, has actively talked about gutting the 14th Amendment. They don't care. They don't really care about the Constitution. It's a joke. It is. It's so sad. It's such a sad joke that the party that tries to run themselves on the Constitution, that has 2 Tea Party candidates from that nightmarish hellfire class of 2010, and Rubio and Cruz, who went into office thumping the Constitution.
Right.
It's repulsive.
Well,
because it's a level of hypocrisy.
The Constitution. The Constitution's like the Bible. We must abide by it if it validates what we want to do.
Yeah, well, in their mind, the Constitution can only bend to the right.
Right. So.
And when it's the Second Amendment or them saying some racist shit, hands off my Constitution.
Right.
But when it's the Fourth Amendment, when you got cops, sticking flashlights up your ass at a DUI checkpoint, yeah, that's fine, because we need that Homeland Security funding. Okay, we need those special high-powered flashlights because that's national defense, right? Or when it's the 14th Amendment, or when anything else that they can try to bend and flex on, they will. But if it's that Second Amendment, because that Second Amendment is how they make their money. That's why.
Real quick, Kyle, your thoughts on Jeb Bush dropping out of the race after the South Carolina, right?
Yes.
South Carolina was Republicans, Nevada was Democrats, and now they're flip-flopping. The South Carolina primary, Jeb Bush had a poor showing. He's finally mercifully dropped out.
And it's sad. It really is, because I wanted Jeb Bush to run forever. Like, just literally, just for the rest of his life, run for president. Why? Because he'll never win, and he'll just continue to make an ass out of himself. It was my favorite thing. I looked forward to it every day. What sorry-ass thing did Jeb Bush do today? When you have a sentient pile of oatmeal running for president,
Poured into a sweater.
Yes, poured into a
Squinting because someone told him that he should take his glasses off on TV appearances.
Poured into a St. John's Bay sweater from J.C. Penney's. That's the type of stuff that you wake up for every morning, that you look forward to. Hey, today's going to be a crappy day at work, but at least I know I'll be able to read something hilarious about Jeb Bush. And I've lost that, and I am very sad. But, I guess it ends the Bush dynasty, at least for the next few years. It ends the Bush dynasty, so we have that to look forward to. But I will miss Jeb. I will.
Now, before the show, I always say, hey, Kyle, anything you want to talk about? I said, shut up, I don't care anyway. But you did say that on the Dennis Wideman suspension, you and I are opposite side of the spectrum.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike.
I was going to say, and for people that don't know, who don't watch hockey, Dennis Wideman, he's a defenseman for the Calgary Flames. In a game last month, he was hit really hard by someone on the Nashville Predators, and he started skating skating wobbly towards the bench, and then about halfway from where he was hit to the bench, he strains up, he slams his stick down, and I don't know if he cross-checked a referee in the back. And after the game, he said, "Oh, I was dizzy. I didn't know." But looking at it, he obviously deliberately cross-checked this referee in the back. And I'm listening to this guy try to explain what he did. This guy's a sociopath, and I don't think I was being over-emotional when I say that that was so heinous that the 20-game suspension that he was given and now appealing, that's too light. I would say, it wasn't quite Todd Bertuzzi, but it was close.
And I know that you've talked about this on the weigh-in with Fred.
Actually,
Slow.
I don't think we ever got to it.
Oh,
I
saw it on the Facebook rundown, and I thought you guys had gotten around to it.
I statused about it.
It's been a busy couple weeks for me.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect Fred to talk hockey anyway.
We do.
I wouldn't. It's fine. Yeah. But I was going to say, though, Mike, I actually do differ with you on this somewhat considerably. And I've heard a lot of folks call up to local sports radio stations, and it seems like the first thing that these callers have led with is, well, I play the game. And right away...
I love the guy who played the game.
And right away that causes said host to immediately check out, dismiss the legitimacy of the call, and cut him off. Cut the caller off after like 10 seconds, whatever. It's what I heard in the wake of all this. Okay. So with that said, Mike, I play the game. Okay.
You know what I love though? I love the guy who he'll continue to subtly drop how far he's gone in the game. I played a little pro ball, and the guys are just like,
Yeah. No, nobody really cares.
No.
But this is why I feel it's pertinent to tell you that I play the game. Okay, because last week I actually suffered a concussion. I was battling for the puck behind the net. Player got frustrated with me, and he took me by the back of my helmet and slammed my head into the glass.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I made the incredibly foolish and cowardly mistake of continuing to play. Part of it was me thinking, I'm dizzy, I'm nauseous, I'm disoriented, I'm short of breath, but it'll wear off. And part of me was also thinking, we're down by 3, I don't want to leave the game right now, I'll look like I'm abandoning my teammates, which is stupid.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a beer league game.
Sure.
And even if it was an NHL game, it would still be foolish.
And that's why Jim McMahon can't remember shit anymore.
Exactly, because of CTE and because of other post-concussion side effects.
You can't even remember because of all your concussions.
It's a dangerous road to go on. And my trials and tribulations with my past concussions that I've had, too. This definitely was not my first one. So, during the game, There was another player, not a referee, not a linesman, but there was another player who I got mixed up with him. I gave him a hearty two-hand slash. I started swinging at him. Me and him both went to the penalty box, and I started screaming at him, threatening him. And I said to him, you were trying to slam my fucking head into the glass like it was a turnbuckle. You're a bully, you're a thug. And the guy keeps saying, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Right. The mind game.
So after the game, I'm woozy, I'm disoriented, and on counsel from my girlfriend, I had a teammate drive me to the emergency room to get checked out.
Okay, good.
Okay, so as my CAT scan results are about to come in, we're looking back over the score sheet with my teammate who drove me there. Kind of going back over what happened, and I'm like, yeah, it was number 95 who hit me. He looks at the score sheet. He's like, no, it wasn't. It was 77. I'm like, no, it was 95. He said, no, it was 77.
Mm-hmm.
Point is that I got mixed up and I went after the wrong guy. And I was so disoriented and I was so frustrated because I was hurt and because I was confused. I didn't just try to go after this guy. I tried to murder him. I felt the rage in me because of my concussion making me disoriented that I wanted to fucking hurt this guy. So what I'm saying is that what Wideman did was wrong. Mm-hmm. I think he should get 10 to 15 games for it. I think the fine should be upheld because you can't set a precedent where a player can knock out an official.
Right.
But I do believe the story that he was concussed, that he was disoriented, and that he may have realized that wasn't official, but his mind wasn't in the right place. And that's why I think in light of this, the NHL needs to bear down, take concussion seriously, but instead they're using the concussion issue against him, and they're trying to turn this against the players' union, and I think the NHL is setting a dangerous precedent with how they've handled this.
So you're not saying that Wideman going after the referee was justified because the referee wasn't protecting him. You're saying that his mind, he saw the cuckoo birds, right?
Yes.
And his mind was, so he may have known it was an official, but he got his bell rung that he was making decisions that he wouldn't if he was of the right state of mind.
Yes, and that he may have thought it was a player. I don't necessarily believe that, but because a linesman outfit looks completely different than the Predators. But I think his bell was rung. I think he was out in space, and I think he was hurt, confused, and just reacting to what was around him.
I think what happened was he felt pissed off that he was hit dirty by his estimation. The referee didn't call it. The referee wasn't protecting him, and in a moment of rage, he felt like it was an eye for an eye, right? Because you cross-check a guy in the back he's only wearing a helmet. I mean, referees, they just wear a helmet and skates, right? Some
wear of them do wear shields. I can't remember if that linesman in particular wore one. But
I mean, honestly, that could have been considered assault, and he could have seriously hurt that referee.
Well, he did. The referee is still having concussion symptoms.
So I think maybe he might not be that type of guy all the time, but I think in his moment of anger and rage, he felt it was an eye for an eye because, hey, okay, I could seriously hurt this referee, but he could have seriously hurt me by proxy by not calling that stuff.
Yeah, which I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying, I've had those moments on the ice where I was confused and I was hurt and I just wanted to hurt someone. The NHL, though, is setting a dangerous precedent themselves by not handling this as a concussion issue. I think concussion protocol was blown off initially by the team to keep them in the game because the Flames are struggling to make the playoffs right now. And then they had to scramble back to it to try to reduce or avoid the suspension. So the Flames messed up. The NHL messed up. Wideman messed up too. But ultimately, the league has to look at its concussion issues as seriously as the NFL does. And they don't. And it's going to be another thing that Gary Bettman will mess up, and it's going to cost him $1 billion lawsuit.
We got to go, but did these leaked brand new demos just recently get officially released?
No, I think they got released about 2 months ago.
Okay, because Amber, who we used to work with at Tap Detroit, who used to come on our show.
Her. Yeah, I miss her.
Yeah,
How's
she was
been?
She was great. I don't know. I only see her on Facebook, but she posted the tape of it, and I remember this song, Brothers song, which I used to think was called Lying Like Lions, and that's what I'm playing in the background here.
That was one of the few songs that on this demo that I liked.
That's one of the only songs they made after Your Favorite Weapon that I liked.
Yeah.
But you know me. If I can't bounce off the walls to it, I'm not into it. We got to go. People Like My Podcast.com, CaveRadioBroadcasting.com, and PendulumPodcast.com. Bye.